know. Thank you very much for sparing time for us, Joseph. Let's get into it. Are you the main UPC or a faction of UPC?
Thank you for having me. I think I told your program nearly 4 years ago that I do not belong to any factions in Uganda People's Congress and that I was too big for a faction in Uganda People's Congress. At the time, I was being very deliberate. That was about November 2020. Court of Appeal had just ruled that my brother Jim McKenna was not president of Uganda People's Congress, dismissed his application, and asked the party to hold fresh elections. There had been a long-standing dispute between Jimmy and Peter Walobiri, basically the Olaratun extension of the party. And so fresh elections was pending. So I participated in those elections and I won it. I won those elections and unfortunately the results were fudged. And Peter Walobiri saw himself as president on 28th of December 2020. And since then, if you've seen Peter Walobiri anywhere on a UPC t-shirt, somewhere around Kampala, anywhere in Busoga, please inform the nearest police. He does not exist effectively. So unfortunately, and I think it's with a heavy heart, considering your recording of the other political parties actively participating. And so you're absolutely right that where are we? You'll notice that Jim McKenna is generally present in recent times, partly having realized that what I told them 4 years ago, that UPC cannot die. UPC is an idea, and UPC is a political party that just needs leadership and to be revived. 2 years later, about 2020, 2023, they began with activism, and of course we saw the winning of the Oyam parliamentary seat, which gave hope to the party. Dokolo parliamentary by-elections gave hope. They participated in the recent by-elections in Kigezi sub-region, and of course it showed that the party is there. From my perspective, one of the things that I found it very difficult is to go around the country and call myself an elected president when I know the delegates, while the delegates have elected me, I do not have the clear mandate either from the court of law or indeed a formal declaration. And so I really don't want to be the new dictator.
Joseph, let me just interject there.
Yeah, sure.
Do you intend to just go silent and wait for the magic to happen, where you will one day probably take over UPC, or you intend to do something, especially as we head towards the 2026 election?
I think that's very important. I went to court in March 2021, and it's really a matter that goes back to Mr. Museveni, who actually talks democracy and talks decency of politics, and I think the burden of responsibility lies on him and his courts. I sought a judicial review which should take 6 months. It has now taken 4 years and 2 months. A judicial review in the courts of law, which should really have determined the position of leadership. As part of that also, I sought a permanent injunction against Jim McKenna. It has not been delivered. But it's public secret that Mr. Museveni and Jim McKenna have got a cozy relationship, and that it would appear that it serves their purposes to be able to do so. But I'm not quiet. I just returned from Eastern Uganda. I continuously continue to recruit, engage, and campaign, and together with all other political parties, particularly in the opposition, engage Ugandans in a constructive polity, including a constructive engagement with some of my colleagues in NRM, saying that, look, I think after 40 years of NRM, we need to be discussing a possibility of a transition beyond Mr. Museveni, but also creating an enabling environment. And that I agree with Mr. Museveni, if only he meant it, that we need to create an enabling environment in which we're able to have a new politics in this country, where politics of issues about education, health, infrastructure, agriculture, the environment, and politics of New Africa, in which we don't become dependent on Chinese, having come from the Americans, but we become masters of our own destiny. That's sort of what I'm trying to do. But of course, it becomes very difficult when my former office should be Uganda House, but that Uganda House office is occupied illegally, but with the backing of the state.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for that submission.